Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Chrism, and I would like to welcome you to this conversation about your Kundalini Awakening experience. And I'm looking into the chat room right now, and I see an interesting development here. First of all, though, Manisha, Mary Jean, Vincent, could you give me a little bit of a sound check here, just to make sure that I'm not talking to the air? Talking to the air here. Oh, I see. And we have, thank you, Mary Jean. I see that you're typing. Good. And hopefully you're able to hear what's being said here. We are. Oh, perfect. Oh, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, well, I'm just going to dive right in as usual. Kundalini can often be misinterpreted by the professional healthcare industry as a mental illness. It can cause a person to become sidetracked into a chemical relationship with the pharmaceutical companies inappropriately, because Kundalini is most certainly not a mental disorder. As a matter of fact, it is a mental accelerant. It is a mental evolution, and the whole mental aspect of it is just 1/5 of the entire equation when we're talking about the entire human equation with regards to Kundalini. Kundalini has signs and symptoms of many different mental disorders, and these are only mental disorders because science doesn't know why they come. Science, is far more interested in measuring the chemicals and measuring the neuroconductivity, trying to measure whether, their drug will make it through the neural tangles or the many different aspects of science devoid of the understandings of divinity. Matter of fact, science doesn't want to have anything to do with divinity, and yet there is Kundalini, and it is a divine application upon a person. A divine application upon a person. And even that is incorrect. It's not upon a person. It is within a person. It is a divine gift of grace within a person that's laying dormant at the last 3 vertebrae of their tailbone, and it is stimulated by an awareness of the divine that is behind the heart chakra. So you almost get like a check mark. The heart chakra stimulates the Kundalini at the base of the spine. That Kundalini begins to erupt within its own conscious evolutionary gift upon the person. And of course, you'll have many different phenomena associated with Kundalini, all of which science will determine as a pattern that is resonant to their understandings as bipolarism or any number of some such mental disorders, schizophrenia. They like to call it another term, calling it a spiritual emergency. The last part, isn't such a bad description. It is a spiritual emergency, but it's not an emergency that requires an ambulance or a physical restraint or anything of that nature. It's a beautiful gift of grace, and it is it'd be more appropriate would be the term spiritual emergence, and you can just take the E off of it. Kundalini is spiritual emergence within the human being, spiritual of a tactile nature, spiritual that doesn't require you, in order to feel it, to adopt certain mannerisms of faith or hope that it will be felt. It can be a fairly tactile and strong experience for people. Very important for people to understand this. It is not subtle most of the time. Okay? It is not subtle most of the time, and you need to understand that. So when you hear, if you're having Kundalini right now, and say you're hearing voices, or you're hearing, you're having mood swings, you're not having bipolarism or schizophrenia tendencies. Now, if you're not having Kundalini, you don't have, at least 3 or 4 of those symptoms that are associated with Kundalini, and you are hearing voices, or you're having extreme mood changes, well, then you might indeed be having some flavor of mental illness. But for the most part, for those that have the Kundalini, for those that have exhibited, people that have had bliss, people that have had strong psychic phenomena within their lifetime, well, you know what? This is not a mental disorder. This is a mental evolution. And that really needs to be clearly understood. Now, just because our society has been so programmed by the chemical companies and their associates, the chemical doctors, these are basically MDs that, if there's anything wrong with you, well, they have some sort of a chemical that they want to give you, so that they think they'll just turn you into a big chemistry experiment, and hopefully this will help you. So I call those people chem doctors or chemical doctors. They don't even they don't want to listen to your pulse. They don't want to they don't even want to read your chart. Oh, you're having a headache. Well, here, take this Prozac oriented medicine. So these are people that have. They want to spend 15 minutes with you, but not really. And I know that would take I think that would take a heavy toll on anybody who's a physician. You only get 15 minutes to diagnose a person's ailment, and so of course having a great level of chemical options behind you would make that so much easier. I mean, if we can just dampen down the symptoms, well, then we don't have to worry about a cure. We can just come back and they can get more pills to dampen down those symptoms. Kundalini is outside of that range, and so many Kundalini people who are awakening into the Kundalini wind up in the psych ward because they don't have the opportunity to be diagnosed in 15 minutes. And quite often the diagnosis is way off base. Kundalini is a profound spiritual gift, and its profundity is expressed through the many different phenomena that occurs for the individual. You can have severe mood swings and have the Kundalini. You can hear voices of discarnate entities and have Kundalini. You can have spontaneous movements of the body that the ego does not have a choice about and have the Kundalini. You can have all these things. You can have the Kundalini. It is a real, definable, verifiable experience, and yet it is not provable within the scientific parameters. We don't have a Kundalini-ometer. And so therefore, because they don't have some little gizmo or some little toy or some little machine that can measure the Kundalini presence within a human being, therefore it doesn't exist. And the same with divinity. We don't have a divinity-ometer either. And therefore, they don't believe in either divinity or Kundalini. And, so it's just a very, very narrow window that we as a Western society have chosen to live our lives through and to manage our health care through and to understand even the greatest gifts that can be given to a human being, which would be the Kundalini. We look at that suspiciously. We look at that as if it's some sort of a dis-ease or something that requires medicine or something that requires, you to be locked up in a mental institution for 72 hours for observation. Oh, and of course, while they're giving you, nice powerful tranquilizers like Depakote or some odd, severely, powerful tranquilizer. And it ain't tranquil. Don't let the tranquil and tranquilizer fool you. When you're having Kundalini and you're having strong Kundalini symptoms, and they throw you into that mental ward, and they attack you with the needle and push that chemical into your body. Well, a whole travesty of symptoms are beginning to go at war with each other. And the Kundalini will always win. Now, the person may look glassy-eyed and stumbling along and drooling all over themselves and anybody else that comes near them, but inside a huge war is raging, and they are not tranquil. They are not happy. This is not a happy sedation. There's a great deal of activity going on behind those glassy eyes. But, you can't tell the nurse that, because the nurse is like, oh, okay, pupils are equal and responsive to light, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, we've given him, this much of this drug, and he's stumbling. Oh, good. He's drooling. Oh, good. Oh, and look at those glassy eyes. Isn't that just attractive? So by all visual means, and even, if they're measuring blood pressure and heartbeat and respiration and all of these levels, that's all going to be consistent with heavy drug use, heavy tranquilizer enforcement. But inside the person, inside the psychology of the person, inside of the divine aspects of the person, wow, there's a great level of imbalance occurring because somebody has been attacked by the medical industry, because the medical industry chooses not to understand what Kundalini is or what divinity is. And so you don't necessarily need to have a mental disorder just because you're having Kundalini phenomena. You need to start looking it up on the web. If you have at least 5 or at least 3 of the classical symptoms of Kundalini. So let's talk about these 3 classical symptoms. And I'm just going to pick some. Kriyas, spontaneous automatic body positioning that can resemble yoga postures. This will happen to you against your will, and you'll just go right into them, and you'll need to do them. And yes, it can be scary. Another one that I've already mentioned would be hearing voices or seeing spirit, seeing entities hanging around the upper torso and head of other people, or seeing them come out of the walls, or seeing them in the walls, or seeing them out in the wilderness, in the forest, in the fields, in the lawn, in the garden, seeing these entities. And of course, when you see them, they see you, and that level of communication has been established. And so, of course, you'll hear them, and of course, they'll hear you. And so, that level of phenomena can be really, really disconcerting to an individual, and actually cause that person to self-commit to a psych ward, thinking erroneously that they have a mental disorder, but what they truly have is Kundalini. Another phenomena would be having energy rushes going up and down the body. It's like as if the follicles of the hair follicles have now turned into little individual serpents or tiny little electric insects that are crawling all over the body. Having your skin crawl is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about waves and waves and waves of activity of each hair follicle upon your body, including the hair on your head and the hair in other places. Then let's just continue. Let's have one side of the body ice cold and another side of the body, fiery hot. It just goes on and on and on. Hearing flute music where there isn't any flute music, smelling incense where no incense is being burned, or the scent of lilacs inside of a closed space without lilacs being present. Let's talk about seeing the picture of an eye floating just in front of your nose, about a foot away, and being there constantly. Let's talk about little roving, brilliant, bright dots of light that are flowing around you and coming right up to you in your visual range, your full-on visual range. No need for just the peripherals with the Kundalini. It's fully awakened in your visual range. You see these with your eyes, with your two eyes. Let's talk about having a bump develop behind what would be classically understood as the third eye, or the ajna from the Hindu understandings. It just goes on and on and on and on. Let's talk about, having changes in your peristalsis movement with your intestine. Let's talk about having your diet moderated by an unseen force. Let's talk about having your sexual activities moderated by an unseen force. Let's talk about all of these things, and these are all classical Kundalini phenomena, which if you took this to your MD, you would probably get DX'd with having some sort of schizophrenia or bipolarism, and you don't have a mental illness. Kundalini is not a mental illness. It is a mental evolution, but it's an evolution that just doesn't happen to everybody in the society, and so therefore there isn't a lot of drive to put some money into research behind Kundalini. I know Gopi Krishna wanted to do that, and he really pushed for that process to come through. And for those who don't know who Gopi Krishna was an individual that had his Kundalini awakened in 1934, I believe, Christmas Eve 1934, and he went through a very, very difficult time. They didn't have fluoxetine or SSRI-oriented medications at the time, thank God for him. But he went all over his native country, India, looking for a teacher or a saint or any kind of an information source about what was happening to him, and he couldn't find anything. And it almost killed him because he made every mistake in the book, and finally he was able to begin to understand that for Kundalini, it's surrender to its agenda upon you is a necessity. And this is one of the first levels of beginning to understand Kundalini that I want everybody here who is listening to this to understand. You must surrender to the agenda of the Kundalini, not to the agenda of Western society that doesn't even recognize it, i.e., those industries that have a profit motive in treating undefinable symptoms in a way that basically just placates their own ego, for that 15-minute time span, and puts the person who's having the symptoms, in harm's way. Science needs to understand this. Western scientists need to not so much follow the money. You see, this is the problem with science. If it isn't a money maker, people don't really want to invest into it. They don't have the curiosity. They only have the curiosity if they got millions and millions of dollars to do their research with, like measuring the mating characteristics of fruit flies. Yeah, let's look at that. So Kundalini is not a mental illness, and even though you may have those severe mood swings, you may be yelling, your eyes may get wide, and your arms will start gesticulating gestures, and oh my gosh, you're just making your point so well known with the passion behind your voice, and you're starting to raise the volume of their voice, and your eyes are getting wider and wider, and you're really trying to make your point. Well, that can be just Kundalini expression through you, or an amplified aspect of your ego. And so if you're not doing the work, then you're letting your ego get amplified by the Kundalini rather than taught by the Kundalini and retrained by the Kundalini and restrained by the Kundalini. You don't let the ego stay in charge when you have the Kundalini. That's part of the surrendering that I mentioned earlier. That is part of the surrendering that I mentioned earlier. And so it's very, very important for people to understand this. It's not so clear and cut and dried as Western technology would want you to believe. It's like, oh yeah, they got those symptoms here, give them some drugs. It's not that way at all. It's actually one of the most beautiful, one of the most amazing experiences a person can have, and it really is. It really is an amazing thing. And I'm looking at Vincent's writing something about, wow, cool. Are you the girl who has called once? Huh. I wonder who he's talking to here. Yeah, okay. Talking to Manisha, yes. I think Manisha did type once, or call once. Anyway, yeah, I'm looking here at the chat room, and I'd like to welcome everybody in the chat room. I would like to welcome everybody looking at us in the archives right now, visiting us at another time, the time travelers. I'd like to welcome everybody who is not in the chat room but is listening to this on the telephone or listening on their computer. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this beautiful, beautiful 3 o'clock in the afternoon day on the west coast of Santa Rosa, California. And we're talking about Kundalini and mental illness, which it is not. And yet, when you, as I've said earlier, when you go in and you get your SOAP, your subjective objective assessment prognosis report, well, if you tell them about your phenomena, well then, yeah, they're going to reach for the phone. And they're going to call the psych ward, and they're going to call an ambulance to come get you. And they have these very, very special jackets where the sleeves you don't have to bother to take your hands out of the sleeves. So there is that. Some people, because they're so frightened by their Kundalini phenomena, but as I mentioned earlier, they will self-commit. And I really, really, really would like to invite anybody that's feeling that way to listen to some of the other programs that we've had. We've been doing this program every Wednesday, minus technical difficulties or, Chrism having a traveling issue or something like that, since 12/12/2012. Okay? We have at least 95% of 12/12/2012 Wednesdays when this show has been put on. There's been a lot of information given into this channel. And I do want to thank Amelia Santara and her husband, John, for putting on this program and allowing this program to exist. It is their gift to you. It is their gift. And I want to thank them on behalf of everybody who may have been helped by this information. Which means I'm going to bring Santara online. And Amelia Santara, she's running for the computer right now. She's probably washing dishes or washing something. Hello.
Hi, Chrism.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much.
What do you think about Kundalini and mental illness?
It is not that.
Did you ever feel that you had a mental illness when you were inside of your early process?
Yes, yes, because I knew nothing about Kundalini at the beginning of my during my activation, and so of course there were times when I thought I was cracking up, that I was, there was very strange things happening to me. Yeah, for sure.
Did you ever go to an MD and ask about how that was going?
No, I did go to an MD because I had a lot of physical things going on that I didn't understand. A lot of strange phenomena that didn't make any sense, and some of them mimicked, I suppose, things that could have been physically wrong with me. So I was a little bit of what's that word when you're concerned about illness? There's
scared to death.
There's a word. No. When you think that there's something wrong with you, because these things are very real. You're having issues with your heart. You're having things going on. So I would certainly have had tests I also would have had depression, but I never shared some of my stuff explicitly, because even though I was frightened and confused, I also somehow knew that I was not insane.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was graced in that way for, that I didn't, that I was able to be okay that way.
Yeah, well, I knew, having worked in the medical field, I knew what my soap intake would read, and there was no way I was going to tell anybody what my symptoms were. I knew what lay ahead of me in that regard, and there was just not a chance in the world. And this was even before Prozac was really coming onto the market. I just knew that it would be a very, very bad thing to do, and I never did it. And I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody that knows they're having phenomena that even though it's mind threatening, it is not life threatening. And so I certainly wouldn't have placed myself into at the mercy of MDs who, good person, I'm sure they're good people. Many of them are good people, and they have a really strong ethic about, giving health and healing to people, but they're working within a paradigm that is so restrictive that it doesn't cover all the different phenomena that can happen to a person. And so even though many of them are very, very nice people, beautiful people, helpful people, they just don't have the information, they don't have the training, and they don't really have the interest or the curiosity to really explore these areas. And so, well, thank you, Centaur. I'm going to go put you back in the Shiva blue here. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to that, my dear?
No, Chrism.
All right, thank you very much. Here, going into the blue. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. I just wanted to get that very, very clear for you. Now, if you feel that you might have some sort of an issue with what I've been saying, or with maybe perhaps you have Kundalini and you're wondering, whether or not you are ill or not, I'd like to invite you to call in. The number is New York City area code 347-934-0026. The number again, 347-934-0026. And feel free to call in. And feel free to call in about any question that you may have about your Kundalini Awakening symptoms or experiences, or, maybe you need to have something validated. I've had Kundalini for over 26 years now, and preempted or not preempted, but since I was a kid, I came in with a lot of Kundalini phenomena, and so I know that I had it in another life. And this is, I know. People are going, oh my God, he just mentioned that other life thing. He just mentioned reincarnation. Oh my God. Okay, let's change the channel. Quick, before he starts proselytizing reincarnation. And I'm okay with that. I am definitely okay with that. People can choose to believe what they want to believe. And that's the nice thing about, at least in the United States to this point, I don't know how about the future, but at this point you can still kind of believe what you want to believe without being killed for it. And so blessings to the United States of America and other countries who follow suit, like many of the countries in Europe follow suit, as well as Australia. So with regard to Kundalini and mentalism, do not be afraid if you see a vision, a waking vision, a vision of something that would look like a person, of something that would look like a monster, of something that would look like some sort of a gaseous type of a vision. I've had all of these things, and they are just basically manifestation of spiritual consciousness upon the the awakening individual. The awakening individual begins to begins to have a clarity of view, a clarity of interaction with non-physical consciousness, with non-physical conscious creation. I.e., the Creator did not just create things for physical viewing, for physical interaction, for physical understanding. Other levels of creation also exist at the same time as the five-sense human being exists. Now, the five-sense human being won't be able to see that non-physical creation, but it's still there. It's just the perceptions are different now. And so as the Kundalini begins to change those perceptions and the veil that separates us from anything beyond a five-sense understanding begins to weaken, well, we can then encounter more of the non-physical, non-five-sense restricted forms of consciousness. Now, it really, this has been happening for people throughout the centuries. I mean, we have a great level of knowledge from people experiencing non-physical creation. Spirits are called this type of thing. Ghosts are called this type of thing. Even some of the harder to believe for mundane humanity, things such as elves or dwarves or gnomes or brownies. These things can be viewed too. They're all real. They're just outside of your awareness. And since they're outside of your awareness, and we don't have an elfometer, well, because we don't have that elfometer, science doesn't choose to believe in it. Okay? Now, if you go to somewhere, where science isn't the major modus operandi of looking at our world and perceiving our world, well, even without having an elfometer, they'd be able to see an elf. I mean, just go to Ireland. Elves are all over the place, all over this world. You can call them elves, brownies, gnomes, whatever other names I mentioned, the little people. In the jungles, you go to the jungles of the Amazon, they're there too. Some of the Native American tribes called them Kanichis. And the Kanichis, fit the pattern, fit the behaviors of what in England, Scotland, Ireland would be considered a brownie or an elf. I mean, not everybody was having delusions. Not everybody in all these different places around the world were having mental illness at the same time. And they weren't having this phenomena occur to them because they were developing a need for a medication sold by a pharmaceutical company. Okay. So if you follow history, if you go throughout history, you can see where these areas pop up. And there's even a whole dictionary of Western European what they call fantastic creation, or creation that is beyond the norm of the five-sense human perceptive ability. Banshees in Ireland, and I think they have, what are those little guys called? Let me go on over here to Amelia. Amelia, what are those little guys with the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? What are those called again?
Leprechauns, Chrism.
Leprechauns! Yes, leprechauns and silkies were also prevalent in the ancient world, as were many different levels of spiritual creation that people at that time, some of those people having Kundalini or having something like Kundalini that would open up the ability of an individual to perceive these levels of creation. Well, they could see it. They could interact with it. It would interact with them. What else do they have over there in Ireland, Amelia?
Yes, well, people from the sea. I mean, mermaids. We have people that swim with seals.
Is that like Dancing with Wolves, only swimming with seals?
No, I think there's a name for them, but I can't think of it off the top of my head now. And then the sheaves, fairies of various types.
Right. And the she or the fairies, they're still a predominant belief system within Ireland right now, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Without a doubt, Chrism, I mean,
I've sent you out to do some pretty strange things in the forest, right? Strange from a scientific standpoint, for sure.
Strange from every standpoint, Chrism. But go on.
Have you ever yourself witnessed or have been able to see, either through pictures that you took or experiences that you had in the forest, the existence of some of this creation?
Yes, I have, of course. I have definite pictures with little shapes and lights that can be seen that are different to orbs even. I've also seen myself, I can't say that I have actually seen the physical tiny shape of a little person, but I have seen lights moving in the forest. I have been touched by very gentle little presences, and I'm aware of those without vision. I can even see them sometimes without vision, if that makes sense. It makes sense to me. And
I had that, and I've seen them full on in my direct physical field or visual field, and I have interacted with them, and they've interacted with me, and it is all absolutely real. It is not a figment of somebody's imagination. This is not a distortion of perception caused by mental illness. These are actual events, and people need to just start understanding that life is far more complex and interesting than what their addiction to science allows them to understand. And I've seen your pictures, Santara. I have seen your pictures, and there they are, clear as day, and I want to honor you.
And I've taken some of these pictures, Chrism, because I have known that they were there. They weren't, not all of them, but some of them are taken knowing that they're there, and then these lights and little images come out on the photograph, which confirms, validates, I guess, it makes me smile when I see that occur.
Well, right. I mean, intuitively, by use of your intuition that they're there, and you're even guided by that intuition where to point the camera.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and this doesn't just pertain to the little creatures, but it also pertains to animals that would not be endemic to an area, such as, say, a jaguar in Ireland, for instance. You don't get a lot of jaguars in Ireland, and even these days, even though I have tried to convince your husband that we need to repatriate wolves in Ireland, but right now there aren't any wolves, right?
No, there are no wolves in the physical in Ireland. No,
it's a wolf-free zone, and yet you'll have wolves appear to a person. Having Kundalini in Ireland, as well as other things, right?
That's correct. Wolves and as you say,
other animals. What about snakes? Do you ever get snakes that are, say, consistent with Kundalini in Ireland, or is that also taken care of by Saint?
No, Saint Patrick.
Saint Patrick, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, they don't exist.
Even sea snakes, I imagine, avoid that island at all costs. Okay, yeah. All right. Well, yeah, so as we go down through the ages, the ancient Egyptians, they had Kundalini, they knew about it, they understood it, they explored it, their priests, understood it, and even to this day, if you go back to the ancient Egyptian and you follow that, all the way up to this day here, we have people that call themselves Masons that have a 33rd degree, and this indicates Kundalini Awakening. There are 33 vertebrae in the human spine, and so all of 33 vertebrae are awakened with the Kundalini, and they have that as the 33rd degree. And they basically take much of their information from the Egyptian understandings, and certainly with regards to Ireland, the Tua de Danann also almost. I mean, I can't say definitively for a fact, but I can say that quite clearly they demonstrated some exalted skill sets that are very, very reminiscent of Kundalini Awakening. Would you agree, Santara?
Yes, Chrism, I would. I mean, they were, there's lots of stories, and, these are all based on people's experiences down through the years. They were called the Shining Ones. In our history,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And the Fomorians, this race of beings that are closely associated with the ocean or the surf, and how they interacted with the Tua de Danann, how they interacted with the Furbolog, how they interacted with the Partholonians of that island. I mean, the Irish history. Pre-scientific, pre-Christian history is rife with understandings and technologies that are missing from the intellectual understandings or intellectual inquisitiveness of modern day human being. Would you agree?
I would agree, and it was very much, the divine feminine was revered and was very much part of society and part of how people lived long ago. And I think, long ago, and I think back in those days, and again, I'm just moving, I think to have experience of Kundalini Awakening way back then would have been a very different experience for people. I don't think they would have, there would have been, I think it would have been something that would have been understood in a way that it isn't today. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and I would agree that they would not have termed it mental illness. If anything,
absolutely,
in the last 300 years, they would have termed it witchcraft. These people would have been tortured to death by the Spanish Inquisition, or on the east coast of the United States, they would have been pressed by heavy stones to admit their collusion with Satan, or they would have been dunked into a pool, and if they drowned, they were innocent, and if they didn't drown, then they were guilty. I mean, all these mutations of what has eventually become, fortunately, a less deadly Western civilization, but certainly a still very, very, very judgmental and frightened Western civilization that instead of killing you for it, they make you out to be sick, and this is an unnecessary and untrue distortion of what is happening when people have the Kundalini Awakening. And I'm going to segue, and thank you, Santara, putting you in the Shiva blue here. And I'm going to segue right now about what we do within a Kundalini Awakening. How do we respond to this? And the one thing that you're really going to want to start to get a hold of is how your inner fears and your inner validation weaknesses begin to deal with you when it comes to thinking and acting about your Kundalini Awakening experience. You want to treat yourself very, very, very kindly. And you want to treat the Kundalini very, very, very sacred. Very sacred and very real. And you want to really begin to validate what is happening. And you do this these days, at least. You have an internet and you have some recourse. Certainly if you go to Kundalini Awakening Systems, the1.com, and you compare your symptoms with what is on that website, well, then you can really begin to understand that, wow, maybe I'm not sick. Maybe Dr. Smith or whoever I'm seeing as my health industry representative isn't correct. Maybe I don't need to be tranquilized for the rest of my life and have my hands, taken away from the movement of my body taken away from me, and the expression of my grace taken away from me by virtue of chemical restraints or physical restraints. And so it's very important for you to begin to understand that this is natural to the body. This is beautiful for the body. This is something that everyone will aspire to. Even now, I'm looking at, Cole's got it, Mary Jean's got it, Vincent's got it, and Manisha, who was there just a little while ago on the chat room, she's got it. I have met some of these people that I've just mentioned. Eileen's got it, and other people. Santara has it. These are people who are not crazy people. These are not crazy people. These are professional people. They're not crazy. Imagine that. Imagine how mistaken science is by labeling people in such a way, simply because they don't accept it, because they don't have a machine that can measure it. Seriously, if you had a Kundalini-ometer, we would not be having this conversation about the Kundalini in this way. Science would accept it and say, oh, the Kundalini-ometer says 0.09101% of Kundalini expression. Oh, okay, we understand that now. Okay, let's move on. And so, but since that's not happening, we're still in the dark ages of fear and invalidation and anxiety and panic and basically fearing the unknown. And this really needs to be corrected. And God's grace goes to Gopi Krishna, who really he strived very hard for this to occur. He passed, I believe, in 1986. But he spent a lifetime really, really, really trying to bring this out into the public awareness. And I think he did well. He wrote numerous books about it. And for anybody interested, you might look at Kundalini, the Evolutionary Energy in Man by Gopi Krishna. And, you can basically get an autobiography of what he did. Just so you know, he did everything wrong, which is why, he had such a hard time. I also did everything wrong. And so I also had a very, very hard time. So it doesn't have to be that difficult for people, though. Some people just need to really, really, really buckle down and surrender. They need to surrender their life. They need to surrender control of their life. They need to surrender their love and control of their love. They need to surrender their body and control of their body. Remember, the Kundalini will use that body in the way that it wants you to use that body, i.e., in positions of devotion, in positions of yoga, in positions of stress that allow the energy to infuse the bones, the cartilage, the flesh, the skin, the blood, everything. This is how yoga was even developed, was from watching people have Kundalini automatic positioning, which we call Kriyas. People were watching these Kriyas, and at the time, the civilization that the Rishis, that's R-I-S-H-I, that the Rishi lived in, which is about 8,000 years ago, give or take, whatever, they all supported Kundalini. They wanted Kundalini. There was Kundalini gave you these great skills and these wonderful wisdoms and understandings, and oh my gosh, yeah, let's all do this. Basically exactly the opposite of what we're doing here in the West, in the technological Western societies. Here in the West, we're just running with our tails between our legs, trying desperately to control it, confine it, and contain it instead of surrendering to it. But the Rishi civilization, they actually went out and they tried different ways. And one of the ways they tried was by turning this cell phone off here. My apologies. There we go. Was by experimenting with movement, experimenting with body position, and they would observe a person going through the automatic body positioning brought about by Kundalini, the Kriya, and they would write down exactly what that person was doing. Wow, okay, they're on their knees with one leg extended back, the palms flat against the ground, and they're stretching back, and their head is tilting up, and they're doing rapid breathing with the eyes pointed to the brow of points and slightly in, and they would chart this all out. And they made a huge number of observations of different masters having kriyas, and they were going to use this as a way to induce their own Kundalini awakening. They were going to use this as a way to induce their Kundalini awakening, so they too could participate and have these great skills and these great understandings. And wow, wouldn't it be a different world if that's what our world was doing? And so this great compendium of automatic positions brought on by Kundalini were labeled yoga. And a guy named Patanjali came along, and he codified it. He organized it into a system, and that system became known as yoga. And it is, he basically put out the first Pratipika of yoga. You've heard of Hatha Yoga Pratipika. Well, Patanjali was a big part of that even coming into existence, and other people latched on to what he was doing and says, okay, if you do yoga, then you're going to awaken the grace within you. And then that kind of got toned down over the years, over the centuries, and then it became something to unify yourself with God, and you weren't necessarily going to awaken anything, you just unify yourself with God, and that kind of got flavored down a little bit. Then it became a spiritual practice where you had to do this in order to be spiritual within the Hindu culture, and then on up to where it has been spread to the West, mostly introduced into the West in the 1960s, and then now it's become something of a health thing where you get healthy by doing yoga, and Kundalini awakening is not even mentioned. The source of yoga becomes the guy who organized the moves into certain ways, which would be Patanjali, and he's become the source of yoga, the creator of yoga, when in fact, of course, it was the rishis who really got that ball rolling. That's all fine and well, except, it's not truthful. It is truthful that it's good for you, and it is truthful that, the word yoga means unity, and it is truthful that you can have divine merging by doing yoga, but you have to do things, you have to have an understanding that it isn't about as much the control of the body. It's more about the control of the ego. It's more about the control of anything that whispers fear of the unknown into your heart. Anything else that is saying that, it's about power and position, and we want to awaken the Kundalini because we want to have an edge over other people. And it's not about that either. And so, the egotistic offerings of why a person would want to have the Kundalini are getting narrower and narrower and narrower when it comes to actually having this force given into a person. And a lot of people struggled and worked hard, very, very, very hard in numerous lifetimes in order to have this occur. And then it just drops on them here and now. And these people are, these are some of the folks that wind up in the psych ward because they don't understand what's going on. And in this life, they're not really looking at it. They're not doing the yoga. They're not doing anything that would pertain to any kind of a practice designed to awaken the Kundalini, and boom, there it goes. This happened to me. This happened to Santara. This happened to other people. This is happening to people right now. I'll have students, and they come over to the ashram, and I'll have them go into severe levels of surrender, severe levels of submission, severe levels of devotion to break through, hopefully, eventually, break through the hold that Western assumptions have over them. And I tell you what, it is not a guarantee that I will be successful with that, or that the Kundalini in me will be so forceful in it that it will, hijack their choice or in any way push them into a greater understanding by virtue of phenomena or by virtue of other means. And sometimes people are just going to have to suffer through it, their entire life of pursuing Kundalini, kind of accepting Kundalini, sort of, never really giving it the full expression that it wants to have through them, but because of their fear and because of their the lackadaisical attitude they may have about ego control or about validation through wisdom or validation through subtle phenomena instead of gross phenomena, then they're just going to squander this lifetime of grace that they could be having. They could be having right now, this very minute. And nobody wants to see that happen. This world needs as many Kundalini awakened people as it can have. This world, in a geopolitical sense, you look at Syria, you look at at China, you look at some of these other Asian countries that are basically eating the world to death. Setting up these man-made islands, that they've connected to coral reefs and then calling it China mainland. This world is coalescing into a maelstrom of misunderstanding, and a maelstrom of misunderstanding can lead to severe crises of war and retribution, retribution, war, and all of these other things. You look at Russia making land grabs, China making land grabs. I mean, there's all kinds of animosity that's being generated in the geopolitical theater right now, and that needs to be ameliorated by points of grace upon this world, which is what the Kundalini awakened person is. That's what it is. So when you have your Kundalini awakened, I don't care if you're 14 years old or you're 42. When you have your Kundalini awakened, treat it with the utmost respect. Listen to it. Listen to the teacher that it takes you to. Listen to the things that it guides you to read. I would have books fall off of the bookshelf. The Kundalini wanted me to read T. Lobsang Rampa. Almost every book, I had this insatiable drive to find this guy's books, which were out of print at the time. I'd have to go to these used bookstores all the time, and I'd get an intuition that, you can get some books over there. And so I'd listen to that intuition, and I'd go over to the bookstore, and boom, there are those books by T. Lobsang Rampa, on the bottom shelf in the left-hand corner of the last aisle, way, way out where nobody would ever see them, except that person that was being compelled to buy every used book of T. Lobsang Rampa's that I could. And that was just for my individual thing. I'm not suggesting everybody needs to go out and read T. Lobsang Rampa, but that is what I was compelled to read when I was in my early Kundalini expression. And so it's very, very important for you to listen to what it wants you to do. And if it has you go to a teacher, and this teacher is telling you to do very, very, very difficult things for your ego, well, then you do those things. You don't let your ego say, oh, well, he's just trying to take advantage of you, or, oh, he's just trying to mind control you, or using any of the fear attitudes and techniques that the ego and entities that glom onto the ego will use to try to kick you off your path. You must protect your path. You must protect your Kundalini. You must protect yourself as you try to focus within all of the Western technological distraction, as you try to focus within all of the energetic and spiritual distraction, as you try to focus on that narrow pathway that we know of as the Kundalini. And it will call you, and it will help you, and it will bring you to information source or a teacher that will help you and will focus on you and will give their time to you because they know how important it is. They know how important you are as an awakening individual. You may not feel that way. You may be constantly going, well, hey, really, I'm just one of the guys. I'm just somebody with the general population, Give me a beer, give me a hot car, give me some good TV, maybe some good internet porn, give me all these things. I'm a happy camper. Give me these things, right? And you're not one of the guys. You won't get to look at that internet trash. You won't get to drink that alcohol. You won't necessarily get to have a fine car. You might. But you don't want to keep comparing yourself to mundane humanity because you are not that. Well, why am I not that? Why am I not that? Because you aren't. Well, I didn't ask for this to come. Well, not everybody does. Not everybody does. Sometimes God just places God's hand on your shoulders and you're that lucky person and you get to feel what it is to experience grace. And so you nurture that grace by following those instructions. You nurture that grace by giving yourself wholeheartedly 100% into those instructions. You don't defile them with your ego expression, i.e., you don't get angry at them. You don't tromp around like a spoiled child. You don't let yourself go off into hissy fits of anger or exasperation or fear or panic or sadness. You honor that and you treat it with the highest levels of respect and the highest levels of understanding and the need to understand and the intuitive trust that comes with high levels of spiritual understanding, knowing that in order to have trust and faith develop within a person, you don't always get to know the answers. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to trust. You understand? And so you treat it very, very, very devotionally. You really give yourself 100% into this. You don't trash it because you're afraid of it. You don't trash it because you don't understand it. You practice those safety protocols, which you can find on Kundalini Awakening Systems, #1.com. You go down the menu on the left-hand side. It's about the fifth option down. It'll say safeties. Click on that. Copy those down. Copy them onto a hard copy. And leave a copy in your car, leave a copy in your bedroom, leave a copy on your coffee table, in the kitchen, in the bathroom. Leave a copy where you can always have one in reach. So as that phenomena comes upon you, that Kundalini grace comes upon you, well, you can begin to respond in ways that nurture the Kundalini rather than throw yourself into an attack against it or try to resist this divine force within you. Okay. This is very important. You stay hydrated. You let it pick your food. You let it pick your expression. You let it pick, whether you're going to have relations with other people or not. You let it pick you. Sometimes, my friends, Kundalini will shrink your world down to nothing. It'll be just you and the person you've been assigned to learn from. You'll have very, very, very limited access to the outside world, not because it's not there. It's just because it's just not your focus and you just don't really have the drive to go out there and meet people. You don't have a drive to... You are being placed within a very, very contained environment, like a star chamber, where the pressures build until that star forms. Well, you're that Kundalini star in the making. And you need to give yourself fully into this awakening equation. You need to give yourself fully into the activation equation. Now, if you have any questions about what I've been talking about and what Santara has also been talking about, I want you to call New York, area code 347-934-0026. Area code 347-934-0026. And I'm going to swing it on over to Her Holiness, Santara Kundalini. There she is. Run! Run! Run!
Okay, is it time for questions?
Yes, ma'am, it is. Or any other announcements that people would like to make. Oh, I would like to make an announcement. The seminar in Minnesota went so very well. I met beautiful, beautiful, wonderful people there. And before we commence with questions, I would like to come on over here to Rosemary, I believe. Is this Rosemary?
It is.
Rosemary, I would like to thank you for putting up with me for a little over 2 weeks and setting up that beautiful, beautiful seminar. Thank you very much, my dear.
My pleasure, of course, and great to have you here, Chrism, for us, and also the joy it is for me, and the challenge in a way too, the teaching, and the power of your presence and your commitment, especially to us and to people having just everything you just said ties in with your commitment to people having the real information and being supported and being strong, all of that. A great blessing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Rosemary. And I want to thank Rosemary, and I'd like to thank Joey. Is Joey here with us today? I hope so. No, doesn't look like she is, but I'd like to thank Joey. Joey was also very helpful with the seminar in Minneapolis, Eagan area. And I'd like to thank all of those who attended. Very beautiful. I'd like to thank Best Western Dakota Ridge Hotel as well. Provided a beautiful room for us to have the Kundalini Awakening seminar there. So yeah. It's a really, really beautiful time. And thank you, Rosemary, once again. Thank you for your hospitality, your kindness, your love, and your conviction.
Thank you.
And moving it up to Miss Santara, Her Holiness. Yes, it is time for questions, my dear.
Okay. So the first question is from the group. I've always suffered from depression, and Kundalini can sometimes increase it. I don't know if it's postpartum or what. I can't figure out what Kundalini is trying to teach me. Everything in my life is great. So where are these sad feelings coming from? I feel stuck in my Kundalini process. I can't seem to ground myself and get out of my own head.
That does sound
Can you help?
like postpartum, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly could be. Postpartum with Kundalini.
Yeah, with Kundalini, expanding that postpartum depression. Yeah. What I would do if I was her is I would go into immediate levels of service for other people, volunteering, thinking of others first rather than my own scenario. I would give service of love, give service of grace, volunteer, help other people, and as you help others, so will that helpfulness and love also be amplified by the Kundalini, and that will translate right back into your own equation. So become very, very service, volunteer, and helpfulness oriented towards other people in your life, especially strangers. Over.
Okay, thanks, Chrism. I was wondering if the smell of heat, like a heater, is a Kundalini sign. It began a few nights ago. The smell gets very intense. At times it gives me a headache, and it's hard to catch my breath. I worry something might be burning, but nobody else is smelling this. What can it be? Thank you.
The smell of the ether?
That's my accent. Let me start that little bit again. I was wondering if the smell of heat, like a heater, Heater, is a Kundalini sign.
I would say if it was ether, then you're either on the ER or you're or you're going into surgery. I don't know which. Okay. Yeah, the smell of burning can occur. Different scents can be observed. To use you can smell different things, psychic things. It doesn't necessarily have to be present in the physical reality for your nose to sense it. A lot of people have a psychic smell, and I'm sure there's a name for that. I just can't think of it right now. When I was at John of God's, 19-year-old woman, paraplegic, was coming there over and over and over, and we'd have little conversations since we were sitting near each other in our rooms in the Posada, the hotel. We're near each other, and she would say, "Oh, I can smell the different entities that come," and Saint Ignatius had a very, very, peculiar scent that she could separate from the various doctors that would inhabit John of God's body, and she could smell Saint Ignatius coming, and she'd tell me, "Oh, he's here." She'd say, "Oh, he's here, he's coming. I can smell him, he's coming." And there, there John of God would show up with Saint Ignatius coming through him and giving people different medical style treatments. So you can have mimicking or at least smells or scents that are coming to you like the scents of flowers, like the scents of lilacs in an empty room, or the scent of what is that? Of incense coming through, wafting through, and you just, in a closed room with no windows, you can smell these things where no incense is being burned, and this is a very, very, very real phenomenon. And so what I would suggest for this person to do is to not freak out because they feel something is burning. Certainly do check, to alleviate your ego mind, check the wiring. If you have the ability to check the wiring, make sure, nothing is, in danger of burning, literally, in a literal sense. Do everything that you can do to manifest an ease of mind, because this could also be a warning to a person that something like that could be happening. It could be a precognitive dream that is, or vision or experience, because the Kundalini will bring those too. It will bring you a precognitive event, seeing whether or not you have the ability to listen to the divine instruction. And so definitely have a look at that, but also realize that you will smell things of a different quality, of different nature, through the psychic senses that will be amplified or instigated by the awakened Kundalini. It is not uncommon to have this occur. Over.
Thank you, Chrism. Next question.
I'm rocking in my chair right now. Is it making a noise?
No. Did you oil it?
No.
You oiled it, did you?
I did. Go ahead, my dear.
No, I can't hear it at all. Okay, next question. I want to know what's happening. When I meditate, my left half of my body is tingling, and also during sleeping, I wake up feeling tingling in my left half from head to toe. The left half only. Also, I feel pulsation and some sort of movement in my left shoulder blade and my left arm. Thank you in advance.
Well, the left-hand side is the sacred feminine side, and so that left side, if it's tingly or if it's really cold, or you're getting, energetic fluctuations that are just strictly going up the left side, I would look to the sacred feminine for this. Make sure that you're otherwise a healthy individual. Make sure that you're not having some sort of a cardiac condition or anything like that. Make sure that you take out the obvious before you start looking at the supernatural. Okay. But typically, if you've already taken out the obvious health conditions that would have direct effect upon the left side, start looking at sacred femininity becoming activated. Have a look at that big toenail, and is it turning black, or do you have black splotches appearing on that left big toe? What kind of spiritual practices is the person doing? What kind of yoga are they doing? What kind of belief system are they having? What kind of trauma to the tailbone may have occurred? Let's start looking into those areas, and let's start seeing if we have a Kundalini equation that is beginning to add itself up within the individual. Over.
Thank you, Chrism. The next question is short, and it was sent to me privately to ask you. I want to know, is it the law of attraction, or is it the Kundalini which is happening in my life right now? That's it.
Okay, hang on. I'm just having a look here. Ah, yes, okay. It's neither. You're having scenarios happen to you in your life that refer, first of all, to your expectation. You have this fixation on the law of attraction because so many books are published about it, and it's such an easily definable thing. Greg Braden talks about it, and other authors talk about the law of attraction, and you've got The Secret, and The Secret's all about the law of attraction. I'm going to say what's happening to you is precursive to Kundalini activation. So I'm going to suggest that you might look into the OBE world right now, the out-of-body experience. I'm going to suggest that you continue to do the things that are happening, because I feel there are good things that are happening to you. But I'm going to suggest you stop trying to put labels on this goodness that is happening. You just accept the goodness that is happening, and continue as much of that as you can. Over.
Okay, thank you, Chrism. Another question as well for you through the a private message. In meditation and dream, there is to be awareness. There are visions. One needs effort, other is effortless, and then dream. So which is better?
Well, I think they're making some great suppositions that don't necessarily, it's a very absolutist question, and frankly, absolutism of that nature doesn't really stand up within the dream state. And so I'll say that you need to reassess the basis of your question. Take out your absolutism. Look at redefining the parameters that you speak of, and then ask the question again. Over.
Okay, thank you, Chrism. And another question through private message for you. Is divine merging after the spinal sweep the same as God realization?
No. Divine merging happens during the spinal sweep. That is when divinity is unified. That is when the person is overtaken with the divine consciousness. Typically, that will have to recede, or the body will be destroyed. Anything that happens after that will just be coming in a short burst, so that the body can be maintained in its physical environment. Is it God realized or God awakened? It depends on whether you receive Shaktipat or not. It's all God. We are all God, so there's nothing that cannot be God realized. But if you go into it, as I was saying at the seminar just a little while ago, just this last Sunday, if you go into it with the intent of forethought, if you go into it looking to open yourself to the Kundalini, looking to adopt certain protocols that will awaken Kundalini, well, that is self-realization. And that is a very, very powerful position to be in. I know that the other people are saying, oh, well, God realization, well, that's the stronger realization because you don't have a choice and blah, blah, blah. But it's the person that makes the choice to come into the Kundalini that has the powerful effect upon themselves. They choose, and God is in agreement with their choice. They choose to come into it, and by selecting that choice, certain levels of refinement are given into the person. Certain levels of testing are given into the person. They are choosing God rather than just receiving God. Okay, but God realization can occur. It's all about God. I mean, we really shouldn't separate, self-realization from God realization, because the Kundalini is the modus operandi that is doing the realizing, whether it's God or self. And so I'm going to say it's divine realization, and that's just going to cover it all. Over.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. There's a question here that's connected with what you were speaking about, but I'm going to ask it. I suffer from chronic headaches and paranoia. Sometimes it's more or less intense. But is it the case? Sorry, I'm reading it correctly. Let me slightly. I suffer from chronic headaches and paranoia, sometimes more and sometimes less intense, but it is the case like this for many years. Sometimes I wonder if I'm going crazy. Can that happen with Kundalini? I mean, the paranoia lasting for many years.
Yes, that can happen, especially if you continue to, say, consume caffeine, if you're continuing to consume alcohol, if you're continuing to to engage in subtle levels of destructive activities upon the body, if you're and in addition, if you're going into strong levels of meditation or prayer, a lot of that upper headache is due to people pushing too hard sometimes, pushing too hard without the instruction of a teacher, pushing too hard, wanting too much. The other aspect of it with the paranoia, certainly with the kidneys, if you're constantly doing things that stress the kidneys and you're having Kundalini at the same time, you're basically running the kidneys ragged. And if you don't stop doing that, you're going to have a total adrenal burnout. Total adrenal burnout. You need to stop the caffeine. You need to stop the sugars. You need to stop the spices. You need to bring the body into somewhat of a more raw and natural expression of your diet with that, and that will also have a very positive effect upon the headache, simply because extreme levels of fight or flight response given constantly into the system will have a very, very profound effect upon the headache that an individual would occur. That would occur upon an individual. And so really begin to look at what it is you're doing and why. Are you taking drugs? Are you taking a lot of alcohol? Are you taking a lot of sugar? Are you taking a lot of coffee, black tea, anything that has caffeine in it? How hydrated are you keeping yourself? Are you having at least 1 liter of water a day? What are you doing, my friend? Over.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Why is the inside of my mouth and the back of my throat on fire?
Because you ate hot spices a little while ago, against the advice of having, that you don't do that with Kundalini, and that is going to have a lasting residual effect. It could also be if you're having a throat infection, if you do a little scope work on your mouth, and you see any kind of red splotches way back there along the uvula or going down into the throat, well, then you can see that you have a sore throat. And this may be due to some sort of influenza or cold virus that is going around where you live. You could also have yelled too much the previous day or evening. and that could also give you a sore throat. But with regards to strictly the Kundalini, this person had spices that were too much and should not have, and it goes right with what I said before. Bland out the diet a bit. Stop thinking that you can live your old life amidst the new one that is developing. Over.
Thank you. I would like to ask for some advice, and this is on the group as well. I have been repressing some unpleasant thoughts and emotions for a while, and now they are out there again. They were not solved, just out of sight for a while. How do you deal with them without repressing them and without letting them drive you mad? Thank you.
By facing them. You must face them. You can face them one at a time. You can ask your Kundalini to help you face them. And what we all have to remember is that Kundalini isn't like electricity. Kundalini isn't like a piece of metal. Kundalini is a conscious divine force within us. It is a conscious, meaning self-aware, divine force within us, and it will listen to you and it will respond to you. You just have to communicate with it in a special way, through prayer or through intention or through meditation. You can even talk to it if you want, and it will respond to you. It may not respond to you in words, but it will respond to you in actions. And so you can ask the Kundalini to help you do this. You can do the recapitulation where you just write it out on a piece of paper. We're trained in the West to believe what it is we write, to remember what it is we write. And so if you write out the whole thing, not type it, but write it out longhand on a piece of paper, what occurred, why it occurred, and then initiate forgiveness into that equation, you'll go a long, long, long ways into having that problem resolved.
Thank you, Chrism. The next question is short and sweet. Can Kundalini harm you?
Yes, it can. But it's not typical. That's not the typical response that the Kundalini will give. Kundalini won't harm you unless you're resisting it, unless you're fighting it, unless you're inside of a fragmentation that is brought on by it in order to bring your conscious self, your ego self, into alignment with higher spiritual values, in order to bring yourself into alignment with greater levels of energetic instruction that the Kundalini is teaching you. If you keep resisting it, it will correct you. And sometimes that correction comes in the form of pain, which can be, looked at and experienced as levels of harm. But it's very, very temporary harm. As soon as you stop resisting, the harm goes away. Sometimes people have to be taught in very, very basic Pavlovian techniques, and the Kundalini is very good at basic Pavlovian techniques. If you do it right, then you get a reward. If you do it wrong, then you get a pain. And I know that from personal experience. Over.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
There was a question on the group. Can anyone help me to awaken this Kundalini energy within a period of 40 days?
The Kundalini can be awakened in a period of 40 minutes or 40 seconds. But is that the right thing to do? No. Not for the most part. Not for most people. It's not to be treated so lightly. You can have a guru give you a Shaktipat in 10 seconds, and there your activation is on its way, but it is not the best way to go. Slow is good. Slow is better. 40 days is enough. I know Glenn Morris, he said, I think he could do it in like 30 days, I believe, and having it done is one thing. Living with it is quite a different matter. If you haven't done any kind of refinement protocols, any kind of refinement work, and you decide to have your Kundalini awakened in 40 days, well, you're going to have a real problem on your hand because you haven't done anything to accept the grace that's coming to you, and that grace that's coming to you is a very, very powerful more powerful than a nuclear warhead, and it's going to change the way you live your life, whether you like it or not. And so to have that kind of a time measurement upon it is not a good idea. Practice the safeties. Practice the safeties for 60 days. Get it down. Get it good. Get those safety protocols going really, really, really well. And then give yourself to that 40-day activation sequence. Over.
Thank you. Next question. I would like to ask about sleep paralysis. I felt like I was being attacked last night. I broke out of it 3 times, and it was only after I put the rosary around my neck that I could feel normal again. It's happened to me many times during my waking up stage, but last night it was while I was trying to sleep. And 3 times I felt someone was there, someone sitting on my chest. After I put the rosary around my neck, it went away, but then I felt a finger pushing against the right side of my skull with pressure, and it felt like my brain wanted to explode. Has anybody else had sleep paralysis? Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, sleep paralysis is common for the OBE state, for the out-of-body astral projection state. That's a very common thing, and it's pre-Kundalini. This person is either being attacked by an entity or she's being forced into stillness by the Kundalini. The fact that she felt the pressure on her chest, like something was sitting on her chest, is a pretty good earmark for entity attack. But the fact that when it pressed its finger against her forehead, her head felt like it wanted to explode. Well, I'm wondering if while it was sitting on her chest, did it put its finger on her chest, and did that energetic area also increase? And if so, then these are areas of site-specific energetic increases that can be conducive to the Kundalini infusion. However, I think this person also has indicated that they've been followed by this entity for a long time, for a period of years now. And so with that added information, I think that they're probably under some sort of an agreement with them. And this agreement is engendering a specific level of interference with them. But I still see some level of positivity with this, too. I don't see this as being like this terrible, terrible, terrible thing. I think it's also getting her used to the idea that discarnate intelligence exists, that discarnate meaning without meat, without a physical being or body, that one can interact with spiritual consciousness in such ways, and that it can also react to them in such ways. It's also galvanized her to have a greater level of confidence in her rosary, therefore her Christian understandings, and these Christian understandings typically don't work. They work as much as you allow your belief system to help them work. The very fact that she has a rosemary is pretty much, or a rosary, is pretty much, cluing us into her Christian understandings. And so maybe if she would go deeper into the Christ, deeper into the sacred male as Christ and the sacred female as Mary Magdalene, and allow those two forces to really coalesce upon her, that would have a positive effect in taking out this this creature, this entity. Over.
Thank you.
Yes. Did everybody leave?
Where, the chat room?
Yeah. I don't think there's anybody else in the chat room. Wow.
That would be unusual, Chrism.
Yeah, I got this. That is so strange. Gone.
Maybe. No, that's a bit. They're probably still listening to us. So hi guys, Chrism isn't seeing you in the chat room.
Write something.
I don't think you were that boring, Chrism.
I don't think. There's everybody's gone. I don't know if they all got kicked off or what. You know how that works.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so wait, they may be back again. Actually, I'm just looking here now, and I'm wondering, do I have a caller? I'm going to ask you another question, and then I'm going to go check that, okay? And I'll let you know when I'm finished. So this question actually was from somebody in the chat room originally, and they posted it on the group. and it had to do with Kundalini. He said, I realized last night that Kundalini wanted me to stop breathing entirely as a test of trust. And they found it very, very hard to stop the ego from going into fear, and they attempted many times to surrender. Could you speak a little bit about that, about, breath ceasing? And I'll go check that call, Chrism.
Okay, yeah. Having the breathing stop is very normal for Kundalini. There's even a Sanskrit word for it, and Shrikant will probably have that Sanskrit word for it. Shrikant is another person who pays attention to these blog talk programs. And hello, Shrikant, to you. The cessation of breath is something that is completely controlled by the Kundalini unless you let your ego fears kick in and begin to control it. And once that occurs, then you get a lot of anxiety around it. You get a lot of fear and a lack of trust and an inability to sustain it. And so if you just let it occur naturally, like I did, when I was a kid, I could just breathe underwater, and I thought everybody could. It was not an issue. And I'm not alone with this. Other people have experienced that same phenomena. Other Kundalini people have experienced that phenomena. Breath cessation is very, very normal within the Kundalini. You just let it go. You get your fear out of the way, and you really begin to understand that everybody came back. Hello there, everyone. Okay, so yeah, we're here, still here. I see. Thank you. I don't know what happened there, folks, but I'm glad you're still there. Thank you, everyone, for hanging on. It's a real defined phenomena. It is a real thing. The Kundalini will control your life. It will control your heartbeat. It will control your breath. It will control how you live your life. There is no aspect of the human being that the Kundalini cannot control. And if it's coming to you and it's causing you to hold your breath, then let that occur. Just let that occur and take that off of your mind. I know it sounds impossible. To do. But I want you to really embrace it. Do your very best. And Santara, I see you're still talking to the person. We're probably going to get scammed again. It's probably some sort of a person wanting to talk about sex or something like. I don't know. Oh, it's Beatrice.
It's
yes.
Beatrice Chrism, and she originally asked me to ask you a question because, she's not too thrilled about listening to herself and her own voice, but she's wonderful. She's going to ask you herself so that it may be of help to other people who may have similar questions. So
Okay,
can I put her online?
Put her online. Yeah. Gosh, I hover.
No.
Hello, Chrism. How are you? Well, I know you're doing fine.
We've had interesting experiences with regards to people wanting to call into the show. So thank you very much, Beatrice, for your courage, and I will help you in any way I can with your question.
And she's marvelous, Chrism, because she has rung in with us before and spoken with us before and spoken to you before. And I was saying to her there, I hadn't heard her for a while, but she listens every week. It's just she hasn't rung into the studio for a while. So nice to hear you again, Beatrice. Okay.
You're welcome. Thank
you. Ask
your
question.
Yes, Chrism, I wanted to ask you, I just recently learned how to communicate with my Kundalini. All of the signs that I was receiving from the Kundalini, I didn't realize that it was trying to communicate a message to me. I just wanted to know if you can see if I'm on the right track.
Well, just hearing you, if you're looking for ways to communicate with your Kundalini, you're definitely on the right track.
Okay.
Definitely on the right track.
Can you tell me if there's anything that I need to improve?
Yeah. Get less attached to your expectations of understanding with your mental mind, and become more fixated on understanding with your intuitive mind. Feel what is being said rather than than hear what is being said. Are you hearing voices?
No. As a matter of fact, it's more with lights and signals. And
in what
signals.
way?
Lights. For example, if it wants to raise my conscious level on something that I'm doing, it will flash a light in front of me, and pretty much if I do as it says it wants me to do, then it will give me like an approval, like another light will come up.
What do you mean it says it wants me to do? Who's saying
like, for example, something that it wants me to eat, it will give me an indication that it wants me to eat something, or it wants me to read, it wants me to learn a mantra, or it wants me to pray, or it wants me to meditate. It will give me a signal through a light, and from that light is how I find I tend to answer it.
Okay, so
I don't. Do you understand?
Are you getting like an intuitive communication of what it is it wants you to do?
Yes.
Okay.
But it lights up like a light bulb right in front of my eye.
Well, no, that's a fairly good communication.
And when I respond and I do it, another light lights up, like almost giving me, like saying, "Well, you're doing it right."
Do you get? Is it a color?
Yes, it's a color.
What color is it?
White.
Okay, all right. Is it ever having you do anything to put yourself ahead of another person?
No.
Does it ever give you like an edge over other people in society? Does it give you tell you how to make more money or things of that nature?
No, nothing like that.
What's it telling you to do? Learn a mantra?
For example, if it wants me to buy something, and if it's going to help somebody in the process, then even if it's something that I don't like, I'll do it only for the fact that I know that if I do it, it will help that person out financially. It wants me to give. It wants me to do something for someone, something kind.
Well, that's good.
If I'm talking to somebody and somebody's explaining something to me about a problem, and I'll say to the person, "Well, I'm going to pray for you." The lights will start flashing.
Well,
pretty much.
I think you're on the right track.
It's always something that it wants me to do something nice for somebody, or to pray, or to it's raising my conscious level on everything.
Well, I think you're on the right track, Beatrice. You keep going. You keep going with that, okay?
Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds very good.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Chris.
You're very, very welcome, and congratulations, my dear.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Any more questions, Miss Amelia?
Okay, going over to my questions. Yes, there's a question here. Somebody looking for advice on the group. They're fairly new to the group. I've been working through a top-down clearing since 2011. It's been pretty intense, and recently most activity is occurring in my throat, shoulders, hips, legs simultaneously. Has anyone experienced heavy night sweats in one area, isolated, or cramping and nerve pains? I'm looking for a way to alleviate it.
Well, I'm not sure you're going to get to alleviate that. That sounds to me like a bunch of detox symptoms that are happening to the person, and those things have to happen. Those things are required to happen. And so, no, you're not going to get to alleviate it. And what you might try to do is you might try to just become acclimated to it and allow it to do the work it's there to do, rather than, because it's strange and unknown to you, you go into fear and therefore you want it to stop. Don't want it to stop. Let it continue to clean you from the inside out. And thank it and have gratitude for that service that it is giving you. Over.
Okay, thank you, Chrism. That's the end of the questions. So what I'd like to do now is give people the address of the website they can go to if they would like to make a donation to support the work that is done on Kundalini Awakening systems that Chrism does continuously, 24/7, for people that are looking for information about Kundalini, people who are going through a Kundalini crisis, Kundalini syndrome, and people who are trying to come into an understanding of the process that they are within. Chrism has lots and lots of different places and ways that people can come into this information, and maybe he will give some of those to you in a minute. But if you would like to support this work, and financial support is necessary, then it would be very gratefully and appreciated. So I'm going to give you the address now. I have two addresses. The first one is www.ascension-kundalini.blogspot.com, and there's a donate button there, and it's really easy peasy once you press that button. And the next website you can go to is another Blogspot one. It's chrism-kundalini.blogspot.com, and that one may be easier for you to remember. chrism-kundalini.blogspot.com. And again, we very much appreciate donations, and donations do not have to be large. You don't have to send €1,000 or €100. At all. Small donations also count. Small donations add up, and these can be really used in a very productive way. So if you're in a position to make a donation and you would like to make one, it would be gratefully received. No pressure on you, just giving you the information of how to donate if you want to do it. And again, I'm going to give you that last one again, because it's an easy one to remember if you don't have a biro or a pen. It's chrism-kundalini.blogspot.com. That's my announcement, Chrism, and that's it from me.
Oh, good. Well, then I would like to thank everybody for joining us this day, this evening, this afternoon, this morning, wherever you may be listening to this show in whatever time zone. I would like to say thank you to all of the guests in the chat room and everybody who has been listening. Thank you, and I will see you this time next week. Thank you, Santara.
You're welcome, Chrism. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Ah.